Hey,
I'm not as
morning.
excited. Good morning.
Yeah, welcome to Over 50, starting over, everyone. I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
And Merle just got back from vacation. How did
I
it feel
did.
to recharge?
Look, I got my vacation shirt on and
Love that
everything
shirt.
still. I
Is
do
that
too.
new?
Look, it is. And look, you got Santa Claus here and August 1st, Santa Claus surfing. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Although there's no place to surf around here. Uh,
Right.
that'd be kind of weird.
What'd you
But
do for vacation?
well, we went up to a family reunion, Anne Marie's family, and we went to her brother's cabin on the lake. And between her and her brothers' kids and family, we had 14 people.
Nice.
We had 4 kids, 5 and under, and it was a riot. And it was
Yeah.
so fun. We rented another cabin across the street to accommodate all 14 of us.
Wow.
Bob and Liz, Bob is the brother and Liz is sister-in-law, and they've got a couple of boats on the lake, one a pontoon boat and a speed boat. And we
Wow.
spent several days on the lake, just really enjoying life, swimming
Out in nature,
around.
man.
Oh, yeah. And it's all green up there, and the temperature was perfect. I think it didn't get above 85.
Wow.
And the low temperatures were great. Nice, cool weather at night, something Anne Marie and I are very much not used to.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic, man. I mean, just being on the lake. Some highlights that we had, one of my favorite things was the late night pontoon boat ride, where we went out in the middle of the lake, pretty big lake, decent size,
Yeah.
and turned off the engine and just looked up at the stars.
How
And
clear was it?
oh, it was crystal clear.
Oh,
It was like we were in our own observatory. It was so
wow.
beautiful looking up and seeing the Milky Way. And just, I mean, it's awe-inspiring. When you
Yeah.
look up there, it just seems like the possibilities are limitless. And it seems like God has a plan, and you're in the
Yeah.
middle of it. I saw several shooting stars. We had great conversation all around that. And
Oh,
oh, it was so wonderful. Okay, and then we played some games. We played wiffle ball, which was really fun. Hadn't done that in a long time, but I could still
yeah.
hit that ball. We were hitting that ball so hard we broke the wiffle ball. I've never even heard of that before. But then we played kick the can, which,
What is kick the can?
okay, this is so crazy that you don't know what kick the can is, but it was one of the fun games we played in the neighborhood. Normally at night, you've got a can, of course, kick the can, and you're playing outside, and one person is it, and everyone's got to hide. And then the one that's it has to find the people that are hidden and then tag them. As you tag people, they collect near the can. And what happens is, in order to win, you have to tag everybody. But if somebody can run over and kick the can while you're trying to tag somebody else, then everybody goes free, and it continues on like that.
I don't
Lots
see
of
how you would ever
running.
win that game.
Well, you got to tag everybody.
That's my
And
point.
well, you got to be
Everyone.
very tick. Let me tell you something, Barry. I don't know that we ever officially ended a game. What
Right.
ended up happening was we'd run around. We'd get too tired. Okay, just tag me. You didn't have any more energy, and then
Well,
the game
yeah,
would
but
be
what good
over.
exercise.
Oh my gosh, Barry, I was so sore from that.
Did you guys
From
eat
the waist down.
gigantic meals? Well, back to your diet, I want to ask you, is there anything new going on there? And how did vacation interact with that? Because I was just going to
Good
say,
questions.
you're running around all day, like you're
Oh,
going to want to eat a bunch of burgers at night off the
and that's what
grill.
we did. Yes,
Oh,
it was great. We ran around, we swam, we did all these activities, but we ate very well. Every morning they made a breakfast, pancakes and bacon,
ooh,
and oh my gosh, and they did it right, all on this forgot the
big grill.
Blackstone
Oh,
grill, I think it's called,
okay.
outside and everything. It was just like being at the camp. It was so
Sure. Love
cool.
it.
Oh, and those pancakes, woo, they were so good. I haven't
When's
had
the
a
last time?
pancake in like a year. maybe longer. This was
So
like the best pancake ever.
I bet. So was
And
this like a break?
oh
Like
yeah.
you
You're not gonna
understood?
pass up on pancakes after you've been running around all night long and everything. You
Yeah.
gotta indulge, but you gotta be
Okay.
careful, right? Okay. Dinner time. Oh, the first night was smash burgers and then fajitas,
Oh
and
my
then
God.
we had ribs. Bob made these ribs that were to die for. Big, thick, meaty, just
Were
so
they
good,
beef or
so
pork?
seasoned. They were pork. I
Okay.
love the pork
Yeah.
ribs the
A little
best.
more flavorful.
Oh, and it was so good. We had campfires and played board games and got very little sleep. But it was just and just being around the family. We haven't been together really since COVID started. So
Pre-COVID.
just being over there and seeing everybody eye to eye,
But dude, to do that
soul enriching.
being outside the whole time,
Oh
I
yeah.
think you
That
can't
was great.
understate that,
No, you can't.
you
You
know?
can't. And really, they have this room out in the back of the cabin right next to the lake, and it's all screened in. So even like you're always outside there. It was really it
That
was
sounds amazing.
fantastic.
That
It
sounds
it
amazing.
really was. But getting back to the food thing, I mean, I was prepared. I had my meals with me that I would supplement in between the meals, so I wasn't starving. And then when I went to my meal of things that like pancakes, I didn't overindulge. I had one
That's
pancake, and
hard, man.
it wasn't because I actually had my prepared breakfast before I went and
That's
had
smart.
the pancakes. So yeah, I would have my thing, and then I'd think, should I have a pan? Yes, I'm having a pancake. I'm not going to pass on that. But yeah, so it worked out. Didn't I actually maintained my weight the whole time? Didn't gain, didn't lose, and it was
Wow.
perfect.
That is perfect. I just want to
Yeah,
mention for anyone new to the program that Merle lost 80 pounds doing a diet
yeah,
called Activia over the last year, less than a year.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's something, 80 pounds. And it's really a very balanced approach. And you use a
It
weight
is.
loss coach. And so it teaches you, it gets you away from the compulsiveness that is up and down dieting. So highly recommended, Activia.com. Did I say it right? Activia.
Optavia,
Optavia.
Optavia, yeah. So Optimum Life, Optavia,
There you go,
kind of cool. Yeah,
Optavia.com.
very cool stuff.
I got a couple of Cleveland Clinic tips for one for you, one for Lisa. And we also, Merle and I, are going to have a really good discussion about a growth mindset. We started to have this. I was mentioning to Merle a few days ago this podcast I listened to, Andrew Huberman's. Dr. Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist, and he's got a terrific podcast. And I'm going to share some stuff. It's called How to Enhance Performance and Learning by Applying a Growth Mindset. I started telling Merle this, and he's like, this goes hand in hand with a book I just read. So we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. All right. But I want to just get to a couple of tips for you here because you're both going to like these. Let's start with you, Merle, because it goes hand in hand with your camping trip. And well, now you're back to the heat again. This is why I was thinking of you. Arizona, where you moved to a little over a year and a half ago, I think. Has it been?
Yeah, a little over a year and a half ago. Yep.
Okay. And you got right into record heat. And so here's a few ways to beat the heat. There's one in particular that I think you'll be like, that's a good tip. That's why I saved this.
All right.
So here we go. Most of these are common sense.
These are the dog days of the summer. I mean, August 1st.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in it now.
Yeah. Okay. So number one, wear loose, lightweight, light colored cotton and linen clothing. I don't think that that's a surprise to anyone.
No.
This is the one this is the reason why I saved this, because I thought, wow, this is very insightful. So think that you're out there having a picnic or whatever. Chill your pulse points, your wrists, back of the neck, forehead, and temples.
That works.
Oh, you know of this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
By
Anne Marie taught me this. Yep.
Okay. Cooling them with an ice cube or a cold compress. Also, a wet bandana around the neck works wonders if you're planning to be outdoors for long periods of time.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't know those. Now, the bandana kind of seen.
They have this material. I'm going to see if I have one here. They have this material where you get it wet and it stays really cool. I mean, it's kind of miraculous, actually.
I think
and
I've
you
heard
put
of
that around your neck or You could in your bicycle helmet or something. I have a bandana I put over my head, and I put that, and it stays real cool. And you put your bicycle helmet on there, and when it'll start to evaporate and everything, and you just stop and you get your water bottle and put some more water on there, and boom, it's got air conditioning right there.
Wow. So I'm sure I could get that cool off Amazon.
You can. It's really amazing that this works. The only problem is it's so hot, you don't want to give up your water. So
you carry a lot
sort
of water.
of a trade right there,
right?
How far away you can go, but water is super important.
This next one, Merle, I think you're going to very much agree with. I know how picky you are about your sleeping arrangements. Choose the right mattress. Well, some memory foam mattresses are made with petrochemicals that create hot zones, but natural foam memory, like Stay Well mattresses, sleep cool, in quotes.
Yes.
It means a cooler, more comfortable night's rest. That's so important. A good night rest is so important.
Oh my gosh, it means the difference between really life and death almost. Gosh, and on that vacation, we had such a great time, did not get very much sleep. I'm, kind of tall. It's hard to find a comfortable bed for me, especially when I travel. But oh my gosh, when I got back home to my bed, woo, it was like paradise.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. Got three kind of common sense ones. Eat smaller meals. That's so hard for me, but I've had this conversation with you recently. I'm kind of sort of not doing the intermittent fasting, really, not eating late at night. Right. But I just 9:30 this morning, I just had an egg on toast sandwich to get me through the podcast. And I was normally not starting to eat till 11 because I was doing this intermittent fasting, but I thought my body was adjusting to it. Not only that, but I was becoming so ravenous that there's no way I could have eaten the smaller meals. I was eating like crazy. It wasn't really working anymore. So I'm trying to eat smaller meals and more of them whenever. When I'm hungry, I'm not. For a while, I think I'll go back to the intermittent fasting after my metabolism readjusts to whatever I'm doing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you got to shock it every now and then.
Yeah, it's whatever works for you, really, is what I find. And I love the smaller meal thing. I mean, that's what I've been doing on Optavia for the last year. And I've talked to you about this before, the blood sugar thing with the intermittent fasting. I didn't even realize it. It was making me really cranky going without food for that amount of time. And I think my wife realized that I was a much nicer guy once I had meals every couple hours.
Yeah. I think
I noticed it too.
Having lived with you in college, I would say I definitely would recommend that plan.
It was a lot worse back then. Sorry.
Well, you had zero body fat. You were a stick, kind of like you are now.
Sort of like I'm the same weight as I was back then right now.
Last two. These are simple. Stay hydrated with fruits, vegetables, and plenty of water. When you're hydrated, your body makes good sweat, and the job of sweat is to cool you down. Last one. Consider using an interior fan along with your air conditioner at home to spread cool air throughout your home. If you never gave that a thought, that might be a good one. Because I know that when I turn on a ceiling fan, it's all of a sudden like, that's should have done.
Yeah. Ceiling fans are a big deal here. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Nice. Yeah. I mean, we've had these temperatures lately. Approaching 120. Yeah, I mean 118. Is my thermometer broken?
Yeah. I just can't imagine. I just couldn't do it myself. But you've always liked the heat. I mean,
I do like the heat. You're right.
The older I've gotten, the less I can tell. I used to be like, summer, bring it on, hotter the better. The older I get, the more I want to be in a little more of a safe zone as far as the temperature goes. Don't like it too cold. Don't like it too hot.
Barry, I want to just take a side street here for a second. And I'm looking out my window right now, and it is amazing out here. The foliage is cactus, and we have this huge one, two huge cactus across the street. Those kinds you see in cartoons. I mean, they're huge, and these things. I mean, Barry, you look at each one of these cactus, the needles that are on there, each one of them would just, make you in agony for weeks. But there's just a billion of these things on there. It's like, how in the world did that? And the way they're designed for intense pain. There's no way you can do this. But some some weird things. Yesterday, one of these cactus, it was like maybe 30 feet high, right across the street from my house, suddenly just came down. I still can't explain it. I'm looking at
I
it right now.
I
It
think I just heard about this on a podcast like
really
yesterday. And
it like
I
almost like cut in half and then fell all apart. It's in pieces on the ground right now. It's
what
huge.
this guy was saying is that he was talking about surviving in a jungle. He's a like a survivalist, and he says that when the cactus, I think it was cactus, it might have been, he might have been talking about bamboo. Now that I think about it, but he says you're looking for it when it starts leaning. That means it's full of
Yes.
water.
Uh-huh.
So that's when you
Okay.
grab it. It's like it's slicing it off, and you have your own canteen.
Well, it's pretty amazing on the inside of these things. You
What
rarely
does it
get to
look like
look
on the
in
inside?
there. Well, it's in the very core of it, it's actually wood. But all around the wooden part is this soft, almost fleshy
Pulpy.
kind of, yeah, and it's kind of, I touched it yesterday. It's sort of it's moist. It's not wet, but it's moist. It's kind of amazing to see the cross section of it, because you wouldn't
Uh-huh.
think that's what was in there. I also had heard, oh, you can cut into a cactus and you can get water, but I didn't
Yes.
see any of that. I thought
Mm.
you're gonna have to really try. You're gonna be
Mm.
disappointed if you worked all day and got those needles in you and you didn't get any of that cactus water.
I was thinking about that as you were telling me. I was thinking I think you would need a machete, first of all, to shave off the needles so
Some
that you
kind
could,
of special tool, yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Well,
So,
and then here's another one, Barry. In the front of my house, I have this. It's a bush. It's one of those Arizona bushes, one you don't want to touch because it'll cut the heck out of you. It's got these sharp things coming out of it, and it's just like a big round ball. And then all of a sudden, we saw these two sprouts coming out of it, kind of like this, these almost like antenna. And I was
mhm.
like, oh, that's neat. And somebody said, oh yeah, those are going to bloom. And so we watched them. I saw them at the beginning of June just poking out. But by this weekend, these things had grown to both be about 20 feet high.
Oh my God.
I mean, it was amazing how fast they grew.
Did
And I
they
thought,
flower?
well, yeah, at the very top, this like crazy bushy thing came out way up there. And these two things, I thought, well, gosh, these are just like, plant vines growing. No, they were wood, like hard trees that just grew.
Wow.
Within 4 or 5 weeks, they were 20 feet high. And so we were like, gosh, I wonder what's going to happen with these things. I can't believe, I mean, they were way higher than my house. And then on Saturday morning, I got up to go outside. These things, now there was a storm. Now they're way leaned over, just like you just talked about,
Yeah.
like the bamboo.
Yeah.
One of them was blocking my door. I mean, it was
Ah,
that big, and it was like, okay, now I got to figure out something to do with these things. My friend Mike gave me a power tool, and I just sawed those things off and put them in the trash. I had
were
to
they like
saw them in the,
sawing big wood branches?
yeah, they were.
Wow.
They were really hard to. I had to. Thank God he gave me an electric tool to do that. I thought I could just get a hacksaw and do it. That would have taken me hours.
Ah,
That wood was super hard. It was
uh,
like cement almost. Okay, so
oh
what's
my God.
incredible is we haven't had any rain.
Yeah.
We haven't had any rain this summer. Last summer we had rain almost every night. We haven't had any, and those things grew out of the rock. I mean, how did that happen? It was and all this UFO talk when it started growing like
You could
antenna.
start your own YouTube channel documenting this stuff, because
It
I've
was
never heard of anything
so
like it.
crazy, so
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. All
And
right.
that's
Let
the
me,
thing, Barry, because you're like, you don't, it's like a foreign planet. You don't know what is that? Like, if I touch it, am I going to have some kind of
sure.
poison on me, or is some kind of wasp going to sting me, or who
Well,
knows? Who knows what could happen here?
if I moved out where you did, I would be doing some research on what to watch out for: poisonous snakes, spiders, scorpions, whatever, plants, different kinds of plants. I really would.
I
I
know.
would know.
I'm laughing because every time I do this, it scares the crap out
I
of me.
bet. I
I
bet.
get all paranoid. It's almost better to be blissfully ignorant here because
When
there's
you
so
feel
many
something, do I
things.
feel something on my neck?
The most dangerous thing out here is the invisible scorpions. And I say invisible because I'm so paranoid about them. I keep thinking one is on me.
Yeah.
Oh God, I got bit.
In
Oh,
bed.
no, I did.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the time.
All right, let me get through this brain
Oh, I had
food
to
alert.
wait, hold on.
Go
One
ahead.
last thing.
Sure.
The other day there was a lizard in my house.
Yeah, that
I
I would not doubt that.
see
We
now
spend so much time in Florida, we see them constantly.
well, this is the weird thing is that there's so many lizards out there that I would think, well, why don't they come in the house? Like I've never seen a lizard in the house. Like I'm thinking these things are pretty smart not to come in the house, but I'm here in my office and I hear Anne Marie scream out there. Ah, like what is it? I run out there. There's a lizard, and it was that big. I mean, it wasn't
Oh
a
my
huge
God.
lizard, but it was a lizard. And
Was it?
then
Was it in LA where you relayed that murderous story about an iguana or something that you killed?
It wasn't an iguana, but it was a pretty big lizard. And this one, for some reason, Anne Marie was friendly with, and I killed her friend.
Her friend.
This one wasn't her friend, and I had to figure out how to capture it without hurting it.
They're so fast. How did you do it?
I know. Okay, so brilliantly, we thought, let's throw a blanket over it. And that's what we did. We threw a blanket over it, and then I bunched up the blanket. Unfortunately, he came out of the blanket, and we were all like, eek! And we had to go chase him down with the blanket again. And so then I went outside with him, and I went and unfurled the blanket, and he came out of there all freaked out without his tail.
Really?
Somehow it's, that's their defense mechanism. They can lose their tail, and then the predator stays with the tail, but we never found the tail. It's kind of, where did his tail go? But yeah, Anne Marie was like, find the tail. I could not find that tail. Anyway, yeah, the adventures in Phoenix are very different than the ones I grew up with.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's do this other Cleveland Clinic tip, and then we'll move on. This one's for Lisa, and maybe a few others of you out there would like to hear this. A little chocolate may help keep you sharp. And there's more and more health benefits coming out about chocolate, the benefits of chocolate. In recent years, news about chocolate's potential health perks have come to light. A review shines a light on this plant-derived food that helps your brain in particular. Research to date shows that chocolate has both short-term and long-term cognitive benefits. Cocoa beans used to make chocolate contain phytonutrients that may lower blood pressure, improve blood flow to the brain and heart, and make blood platelets less sticky and likely to clot. That's a lot of benefit right there.
Yeah.
You may also experience improvement in working memory and in the way your brain processes visual information. There's also some evidence that chocolate may encourage the bacteria in your gut to generate anti-inflammatory compounds.
Wow.
I mean, it just gets better and better. I'm almost done.
No kidding.
Keep in mind, though, that not all chocolate is equal. I hope you guys realize this. Conventional candy bars tend to be high in fat and sugar and junky ingredients like seed oils, which is awful for you.
Yeah.
And so what Lisa buys, in fact, I get her when I go to the store. I also buy these candy bars, large candy bars that are 70%. I don't understand the difference between cocoa and cacao. They seem
I didn't know there was a difference.
I
don't know anything about it.
Well, it's 70% cocoa or cacao. So it's almost a bitter, is not a very sweet chocolate. But if she eats like 1 square a day, and that's like perfect. That's what you should do. It's kind of like having that 1 glass of wine at night.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you should do this if you can moderate. Not Hershey's.
Right. I've heard dark chocolate is the way to go.
Yeah,
it's more of that bitter.
That's what that is.
Not as sweet. But I also heard anti-inflammatories. That's another thing that these things have.
Yeah, I just said that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
you said a lot. I didn't catch that one. There's a lot packed into there, man.
There's a lot of benefits there. And so when you get that dark chocolate, you can get it at different percentages of the cocoa or cacao. And Lisa's sweet spot, she likes it at 70%. The dark chocolate is 70%. Gotcha. And it's only at Aldi's where I shop. Those bars are only a couple dollars.
Wow. Well, that you
It
know
beat
what?
them
There's hope out there. But it's the difference between the two chocolates, right? You can't
big time. This
don't
isn't
go
milk
out and
chocolate.
get a Snickers bar. That's not
Yeah,
what we're talking
I'm
about
going to be
here.
healthy. Right.
Yeah, get one of those a day.
Right.
Two to be safe.
So,
Um,
Merle, if you're ready to move on, we got the heavy stuff about what I said about Andrew Huberman's
yeah,
podcast.
yeah. Let's go.
Okay. And I wanted to just show you this guy. I love his podcast. He has 3.7 million subscribers. This is him. The dude is jacked. He's a total health nut, and
Yeah, you can see that.
absolutely brilliant. He's got one of the highest rated podcasts on the planet. He's always on like Rogan, Lex Friedman, Jordan Peterson, and his own podcast. Like he does a ton of research. And then this is an hour and 40 minutes of him just talking, explaining the research. Now, what I want to do here is just talk about in general what it is, because what I want to do, what I want you guys to come away with is a desire to actually listen to the podcast. I don't watch it on YouTube. I listen to it on Apple Podcasts while I'm working out or whatever. This one I listened to 2 or 3 times because it was so important to me in how I process things, what motivates me, what doesn't motivate me, and how wrong I was about my approach. And I think a lot of you might relate to that. One thing that he wants everyone to know, remind everybody, it was around the 90s, studies by neurologists have shown that our neuroplasticity, which means that our minds can continue to expand and grow and synapses still form. We used to think that our brains stopped being able to regenerate after like 30. And it's not true. We can continue to grow and change our brains and our minds. So it can occur throughout life, even in your 90s. This is the brain change and growth.
Huh.
So what he talks about, I'm just going to try to kind of relay this more instead of reading, try to just relate to you as you and I discussed the other day, Merle. It's talking about labels, and he made a good point by using parenting as the first example. So when you have your kids and they're performing well or whatever, you believe it or not, you don't want to say, "Hey, you're a great athlete," or "You're really great at math. You're a great homecoming queen," or whatever these labels are. Because what happens, and studies show, I'm going to juxtapose this about versus an effort feedback in a minute. But what studies have shown is that if you give somebody these labels, they will really become identified with them, attached to them. And when they become challenged in certain tests and tasks in the future, they will avoid the hard tasks and questions so that they can retain their label. They don't want to put that at risk and fail. So with these labels, these kind of on a pedestal kind of labels, you also instill a fear of failure, that they don't want to lose that label.
Yeah. Yep.
So juxtapose this with versus the effort feedback that, hey, you tried so hard and you put so much effort into this. It was great to see your success. When you didn't know the answer to those math problems, I love how you asked other students how they solved those math problems.
Interesting. I see what you did there.
And
you flipped it around.
Yeah.
It wasn't the results, it was the effort.
The effort all the way. And what would happen in these tests over years, that the people that were giving labeled feedback, they would take a 25% diminishment in performance over, say, a lifetime, as they're trying to avoid tasks that they may fail at. Whereas people that were given effort feedback, think verb feedback, that you did very well with your effort here. You really solved these problems. You really had stick-to-itiveness, that kind of thing. Verbs. These people would have a 25% increase in performance when they're given the same tests where they are challenged with difficult problems and they could choose their level of difficulty. The people with effort feedback chose the more difficult stuff and would therefore excel in the long run, by far,
Interesting.
actually. So that leads to, it's kind of the second half of the same podcast, the growth mindset. So a growth mindset is intelligence feedback versus effort feedback, very much what I was just describing, but he goes on to talk about motivation. And this is in quotes. I hope that I'm not going too fast. But he talked about the demotivation versus part of stress and the frustration that comes with stress, but it can also be very motivating. And Dr. Ali Crum, who we did quite an introduction for with her, she's a very esteemed scientist and athlete. And she began doing some studies, coming to some conclusions some years ago called, in quotes, stress as enhancing mindset. And she says, if you learn that stress is negative, you will have negative effects and avoidance to these situations and learning situations. It's non-growth and you're seeking a comfort zone. Because stress, we talk about it too. Think about how we've talked about how stress can be so overwhelming. The feeling of overwhelm with. Who wants that? You know?
Right.
Well, the truth of the matter is if you learn that you're not learning until you're out of your comfort zone and you're feeling some stress, that's when you're learning. So you're in an anti-growth mindset if you're in avoidance.
That makes sense.
Stress.
Yeah.
And this is just off the top of my head, but he talked about one of these. He's a neurologist scientist at Stanford, a professor there. I mean, he's big. And he was talking about one of his peers, one of his super famous teachers that would begin his very high-end class with a motivational speech about how if you don't feel the stress, if you don't feel that you're being challenged, that you're not learning. He goes, everyone in here will be stressed out during this learning process. Know that that's when you're starting to learn. And he goes, if you don't feel that, then you're not going outside your comfort zone and you're not growing. Back to the growth mindset.
Yes.
So that in a nutshell is what that hour and 40-minute.
Interesting.
It is. And I want people to look it up and listen to it, because when you hear in long form these studies unfolding with all this proof, you'll get a better understanding of what I'm just giving you highlights on. I'm like a movie trailer for it, and that's all. So
I have some questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I get this, and it makes sense what you were saying about stress, and nobody likes stress, but I mean, just like when we go to the gym and we're working out, if there were no stress, you wouldn't be able to build muscles.
He used that same analogy.
Yeah. And so stress, it sounds like what you're saying and what he's saying is it's not so much avoiding stress. It's really more how to deal with stress and what our attitude should be about stress, and that we can actually be in stressful situations and actually enjoy ourselves. And I think about how some people actually use it as almost a drug. I was watching this video last night of these guys. Have you seen these guys in these body suits that they could just jump off a cliff and
sure,
fly?
squirrel suits.
Okay, yeah.
I've had dreams that I've been doing that. Super real.
It is amazing. So I was watching this, and these guys jumped off some amazing cliff. There was like 12 or 13 of them that jumped off one after another, and then one of them had the camera on them. And I was feeling stress as I was watching, because I kept thinking, this guy's about to crash. It just seemed like he was going to crash any minute into the ground. And he was so close to the ground, and the ground was moving so fast underneath of him. And anyhow, he makes it through that whole thing. He almost ran into a tree, and then he finally is out over the open, and he pulls his ripcord and he floats down to the bottom, and then he takes his helmet off and he goes, "Woo, boy, I got pretty close that time. Ha 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 ha. And he just laughs. Like that guy would have just been confetti just a few
Yes,
seconds ago, and he's laughing about it.
it
And it's like
happens.
it's controlled stress that this guy is
Mm,
seeking. Like he's seeking it out, and he's living.
yeah,
And when he overcame it at the end, he couldn't help just laughing out loud because he was on top of the
amazing.
world managing that whole thing. And
Yeah.
that's the thing about stress is if you can be on top of it, it can be the best roller coaster ride in the world.
That's interesting that you say that. And also another thing you reminded me of that Huberman mentioned is because you mentioned it's how you perceive stress. It is. Because if you see it as debilitating, as overwhelming, it can reduce like testosterone and the anabolic effects in your body, meaning that it could be harmful, like
Like
really
a
take.
poison. Yeah.
But if you see it as being constructive and as a challenge, it actually increases the anabolic output in your body. It becomes like a steroid.
How about that? I mean, isn't it just how we view almost everything in
Yeah.
life, and
Yeah.
how the way we view it is either going to make us stronger or it's going to make us weaker?
That's a good
It's
point.
a pretty interesting thing to take a look at, and every aspect. We talked about our eating, we talked about our vacation, we talked about
Yeah.
working out, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing. It's how we look at it that makes all the difference in the world, and
Isn't
it
that
is
right?
how we look at it is going to determine the output at the end. Is it going to be positive or negative? And
Very true.
boy, is that ever a key to life.
Yeah,
And
that's what you just said, like about working out or something. And I think all of us know a lot of people that just have a horrible relationship with exercise. And so they don't exercise. And I don't, when I go to the gym or do any kind of exercise, I don't think, well, this is going to feel great. I think, though, I'm going to feel great at the end of this. And I do. I feel so much better after I work out.
and
That's why I
every
work out.
don't you? I mean, you're almost like in a blissful state after you work
So,
out.
so my relationship with it is positive because I
Mm.
think about how I'm going to
Isn't
feel.
that interesting? And when I was going to the gym regularly, I had determined that not to think about the workout at all on the way
Mm,
there,
mm.
but
Oh,
think
right.
about how good I'm going to feel.
On the way home.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I would focus on what it was I was going to listen to while I was
Ah,
in the gym on the way there that I couldn't
yeah.
wait to listen to.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so yeah, it's all in how you view things. It's pretty cool. I like
Right.
that.
Right. So when we talked, I told you a little bit about this book a few days ago. That's what prompted this podcast. We're like, we got to stop talking. This would be a great podcast. You mentioned the book that you held up a few minutes ago. Is when I was telling you about these things, you're like, oh my God, this is just like in line with this book I've been reading.
Well, now it had a lot to do with the labeling piece, and
Mhm.
we went back to let's go back to that because I
Okay.
think that's a really interesting thing. Is
It is.
you're labeling people, and it by either performance or attainment, and if you're
Yes.
like, well, you're the best at this, suddenly that person doesn't try as hard any longer, and you start to go backwards. And this is this whole labeling thing, and how people are thinking about things, and
Let me
as you
explain that again briefly,
go ahead,
as
because I think
concisely
this
as
is
I can.
really interesting.
Yeah, when we attain a label, and something that I didn't say a few minutes ago, and I should have. I said that Andrew Huberman started off with talking about how parents with their kids, because that's the most obvious. But then we have to deal with ourselves for the rest of our lives. And we label ourselves. This is what affected me a whole lot when listening to the podcast. Is I realized that I have done that my entire life. Is I think about myself in a relation to a label about what I'm good at, what I'm bad at. Like I'm bad at math. Now, am I really bad at math, or did I just not apply myself in the correct way? Huberman used the analogy of his memory. He goes, I think I have a really good memory. I know I do, but he goes, the truth of the matter is I've always used these techniques that I don't remember, but that he goes, I've worked really hard at it. And so is the process. That is why I have what seems to be a good memory. And so if me, I've always said I'm bad at math, so I hate everything that has to do with bookkeeping, anything like that. And the truth of the matter is, I know in the back of my mind that I could reform my relationship with a lot of things if I see it in a conceptual manner rather than think about it in X's and O's. And I've done that before. So this is about how we label ourselves, and you don't want to do that. What you want to realize is that if you put in the effort, the results will come. So reward yourself for being the person that puts in the effort.
You're reminding me of my experience in high school with track. And I had this amazing coach, Coach Robinson. And one of the things we were the league champions 3 out of the 4 years I was there. And his secret to success was not about instilling in us this desire to beat the other team. It was all about helping us to beat ourselves in our personal records. So that's what he would celebrate, is we'd run these track meets. Nice. We might get beat badly, but at the end of the meet, we'd go back into the field house and he'd go through each person that beat their personal record from the last, from their entire past.
That's perfect. It's a perfect example.
So we were all like, yeah, you beat your personal record. Like, that's what we were focused on. And by doing that, he had championship teams for 3 out of the 4 years. And we were all focused on beating what we had done previously, just getting a little bit better and taking that focus off of the world and then putting it on just beat what you did yesterday. And just taking it that way turned us into champions. And it's a secret to life right there. It really is. And that's what I was thinking about while you were talking about this whole labeling thing. One other thing I'll mention is, and this kind of led into this whole thing about the book, but I was listening to a podcast where somebody was talking about the Navy SEALs. And what he was saying is, the Navy SEALs, these guys are the baddest of the bad when it comes to military. They go through the most rigorous training. I've heard horror stories about it, that people have actually died going through this training. It's that rigorous. And
it's called buzz training.
This guy's talking about the people that make it. And he said, look, we get people, athletes, the best athletes from all over the country, the ones that made the headlines in their local newspapers. Those people never make it. And he said, the people that make it are normally the people you would not expect to make it. And these are the people that when they're down and out and they've used up their last bit of energy, they'll muster up enough energy to help the guy that's struggling next to him.
Wow.
And that's it. It's it. They reach down deep, and it's not about them. It's about the other guy. And these people that have these labels, you're the best athlete, you're the number one athlete. They're trying to be that number one athlete. They're about them.
Yeah.
And those people don't make it as the heroes. The real heroes are the ones that are looking at other people. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. It makes me happy to know that we have this elite force of military people that are looking out for us, that have that kind of attitude.
And I want to say one word of caution there, because of personal experience. I've done some research and can tell you that you're 30 times more likely to run into a fraud when someone tells you that they're a Navy SEAL. It's called stolen valor. 30 times. That's how many people are out there grifting off of that.
That's amazing to me. I mean, what kind of person?
I said this before. Just check their LinkedIn profile, because if I'm a Navy SEAL, I got it in giant letters at the top of my LinkedIn profile.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. I mean, if you earned that, you're going to wear that. It's going to be everywhere.
Sure. I wanted to say one more thing to illustrate the label thing, a personal thing. So coming off the heels of this podcast for about the second time and listening to Huberman tell me his personal example about his memory, and it's because he uses the system is really why he's got a better memory. I was about to go to a networking event with the Chamber of Commerce, the Beechwood Chamber of Commerce, which I just recently joined. And I've been to 2 other events, and there's some really key people there. I can't remember their names or faces or anything. I really hate that. I'm terrible.
I hate that too. Yeah.
I'm really bad at it. And there's the label, right? So, yes,
yeah.
I'm the scatterbrain artist type. I have a bad memory. All these labels that I self-labeled.
I see what you're saying.
And so what I decided to do, because on the other side of that, the lesson is that if you put in the time and effort, you will get better and do better at anything and everything. So I decided to go onto the chamber website and look up the membership and to put names with faces, the pictures and all of that, just like a website I did for the Kiwanis group recently.
Okay. All right.
Well, the only thing is they didn't have the pictures. Best of intentions, but the website's terrible. I told the executive director at the event this story, and I'm like, you need me to redo that website for you. But the point to that is I was going to put in that effort, that time.
Yeah.
And I would have excelled. I would have went there and I would have been like, hey, you,
That's what I normally say. Hey, you.
I hope
this is a terrible thing, though. It's forgetting names. I mean, we're professionals. It's not that I got older and I'm like that. I've always been like that. And
I thought as a salesman, you would have had so many techniques.
Terrible. I don't. Here's the technique, but you have to remember it, right?
Yeah.
Because here's what happens to me is I go to introduce myself, and it's such a, I don't know. I want to come off well. I want to, hey, how you doing?
So you're thinking about that. You're in your head. Yeah.
And as that's happening, the person says their name, but they might as well be
all
like,
the time.
And my name is. I
know. No, what we're supposed to do.
Did not even hear your name.
Right. What we're supposed to do, this, I've had it work a few times, is do a word association immediately. Yes. I had it work years ago. Like, I remember I met this person when I first learned this technique 25 years ago. Her name was Megan. I thought she was a very average looking person, and I could not remember her name. That's always embarrassing to me. I think it's insulting and embarrassing. And then I looked at her and I said, like this yellowish hair, eggnog, Megan, eggnog. I don't know, but I never forgot it since.
That's a good one. I like that. Here's a couple that I have is that after you get in the habit of using that person's name, almost immediately after they say their name to you, like, hey, I'm Merle. Hi, Merle. How are you doing? Like, or you're immediately using their name. Right. That's one. I like your technique. Another one I have is, instead of that association, it's an association. Like, my friend Mike, he likes to drink Manhattan, so it's Manhattan Mike, like just like Perfect. Those kinds of associations, or it's Crazy Shirley or whatever, like you don't say it to them, but that's how you remember it. And but I hate, here's what I hate. Wait, let me tell you what I love. I love when people remember my name.
Sure.
I hate when they remember my name and I've forgotten their name.
Oh yeah.
And then it's like, okay, the right thing to do is the first time you realize it, that's when you jump in and you say, you know what? I've forgotten your name. I'm sorry about that. And they might give you some ribbing about it. But anybody that's ever done that to me, I'm actually delighted that it's important to them to know what my name is. So, but inside of me, when I'm saying that, I feel like, what a dork. I don't remember this person's name and they're going to know it. I don't want to reveal that. Maybe someone will inadvertently say their name and I'll be able to capture that. And then it's just like, it never happens. It's just, you want it to,
and so it builds, that tension builds. Like you never got their name. Now I'm gonna be talking to them for 45 minutes and walking away without ever saying their name. They know.
Right. Hey, speaking of that, Barry, it's something out here that's happened is I'll go every once in a while. I got a restaurant down the street. I'll get takeout from there, and
kind of restaurant? I'm just curious.
This place is called Blue 32. It's a sports bar kind of
You told me
place, and
about it.
they make the best food over there. The thing is do you tip when you pick up food for takeout?
You know what I generally do? 10%.
Okay.
If
Okay.
I'm there, I do 20%.
So it's sort of like, okay, should I tip? Should I not? Well, here's the thing is, if they're nice to you, it's hard not to tip them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because
sure.
That's what I would do if I were them. I would just be as nice as possible. And here's what they've done over there is that I'll call over there and I'll give them my order, and they say, what's the name I can put on? They've learned how to recognize my name, and I'll say Merle. Oh, Merle. And I'm like, oh, and it makes me feel so good. And then when I get over there, they're like, it's almost like Norm walked in, Merle, like that. It's just like, every time, here's a $10. Here you go.
They're well trained. That they didn't come up with that on their own young minds. They're well trained.
I don't feel bad about tipping those people at all. If you're gonna remember my name, you got me. That's my there it is. That's my kryptonite right there.
Yeah, we have a neighborhood bar on Lee Road called Heights Grill, where it's pretty average in all regards, but it's clean and everything, and the people are nice. But I'll guarantee you, I know the lady that runs the place, that owns the place. Number one on her list is she tells you how to remember everyone's name. I bet you she trains them with some skills, because everybody remembers everyone's name. I
love that.
It's
beautiful. I
That's
was at
smartest.
My barbecue place the other day, and the girl says, hey, I'm going to give you this extra, whatever it was, because you're one of my favorite customers. There you go. Another tip right there. Like, all you got to do is say that kind of stuff to me. And man, it's like hitting a pinata. Here comes more treats here.
It is. It's a little dopamine hit. How is the barbecue out there?
Oh my gosh. I found this place called Wood Barn. It's right down the street from me.
Sounds good.
They make brisket like you. And my mom would say, that's good enough to make you want to slap your mama. Like, I don't know what that exactly means. I've never felt like that before, but I get what she's saying. This stuff is just amazing. And everyone that's come to visit me, I've gone to get this for, and they just rave about it. There's no brisket like their brisket. It is amazing. In fact, I had some over the weekend, and wow.
They
never let me down.
We went out to Austin a few years ago, and that's known to be the barbecue capital of the world. And we certainly had some extremely good barbecue. But I will say, on the West Side, there's a really good place called Woodstock, and it's as good. It only gets so good, I think.
I think you're right about that. It only gets so good. But it sure does get good, boy. That's one of my favorite things.
Did you want to talk about that book?
It's funny you're bringing that up, because this is the book we're talking about, the new strategic selling. And I remember I related it to your story before, and I was like, how did I relate this book to that guy? And I just can't remember.
Immediately.
Yeah, and I couldn't come up with a relevant connection as we talked about it, so I'm not going to go into that and try to make that
All
up.
right, let me ask you this then, because you introduced it to me on the phone the other day as the most boring book you ever read.
It was
super important for your career.
Yes. All right. Well, it's called The New Strategic Selling, and it's all yellow and everything. I got this back in like 1996, I think, and this was when I started working for SkyTel, which they were very, very strategic about selling, and there was a very good reason. We introduced the first two-way pagers to the market, which now is text messaging. No one had that before. SkyTel came out with this, and we introduced it to the world. And I'm very sorry that you can't talk to your kids anymore, because I introduced text messaging, and now no one pays attention to anybody. But that's what the way to do it back then. Nobody wanted it back then, so we had to have a real strategy to come up with it. And this book, you got so many sales books about selling tactics. Tactics, blocking and tackling. Here's this close, here's that close. This is none of that. This is how to strategically look at opportunities how to determine which opportunities are your best opportunities and which opportunities to just leave alone. And so there's many different analytical tools in this book that help you to not only determine which are the best selling opportunities, but all along the selling process, you can scientifically test out where you are and how strong your actual selling program is with this particular account.
Yeah,
And
with that particular personality. I remember you telling me that.
This is where it was. We were talking about, I think we were talking about the labeling piece, and I was telling you that inside of this book, one of the selling objectives is to understand the buying mode that your customer is in.
Yes.
And there's 4 different modes that your customer can be in. One is even keel, another is overconfident, another is trouble, and the other one is growth. And so the 2 that are great to sell into are trouble and growth, because they know that they have an urgent need to excel above and beyond where they are, whether they're a sinking ship or whether they're just taking off and they want to climb to a higher altitude. Those are going to be very receptive. And there's certain ways that you can speak to these people in that mode that's going to cause them to want to, that's going to cause them to want to indulge in your products or services. The trouble mode is actually the best one, because you're sinking and you're about to die and you need this now. The ones that are the hardest are the overconfident mode, and also the one where it's even keel. So even keel is like, everything's fine, there's nothing. Why fix what's not broken? And then the overconfident is just, hey, everything's going great over here. And as they're heading towards the iceberg and the Titanic is,
but they don't
see
it. When we were talking about that, I remember that this is how it came about. When I started talking about the labeling, you were like, yeah, that's just like the people in the overconfident mode, because things have gone well for them all this time. They don't even see
what it is.
Their performance is declining.
Well, it's like
they're an avoidance.
If you were a salesperson selling lifeboats, you would not be able to sell one lifeboat to the Titanic, because the Titanic was unsinkable. And so they had come up with this whole science where this boat can't sink. In fact, that's why so many people died. They hardly had any lifeboats on there, because it was unsinkable. But then you see what happens. Yeah,
well, that one dude had to be floating around on a bookcase or something at the end of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. What a terrible way to go. And what a terrible thing that happened to these guys that wanted to go down and see it. I mean, geez, it's tragedy after tragedy with this.
I talk about the sub. God, that was a horrifying story.
Yeah. Geez, what a way to go.
Right. All right. You got anything else that you want to say about that book? Who's the author?
Miller and Hyman. And so these 2 guys have been boring salespeople for years and years. I got to tell you, it was the most boring selling concepts that I had to learn. However, they told me that if you learn these, it's going to change your life. It's going to elevate your position.
I see it.
You're going to be able to move from these simple sales to complex sales with multi-million-dollar sales. That's exactly what happened. And so I'm so glad I have that inside of me. And it was well worth the pain of going through that and meticulously learning that. And then I've taught that to so many people as we've come through these different experiences, man. It's pretty cool stuff.
I wonder if they have an audio version. And if they do, is it real monotone?
This is selling 101. I mean, it is just it's like that. And then you got these blue sheets you fill out. It's like I could almost throw up saying that. Blue sheets. But you're mapping out your strategy and everything. You know what? It's actually pretty cool when you start to get into it and you start to understand. And it's almost like suddenly the fog clears up and you can see what the heck you're doing and how to do it and how to get through these situations. Strategy's king.
Yeah, totally got you. I totally got you. If we're done with that, I didn't know if I was going to go here or not, but what the heck? Less than a week ago, we had the UFO congressional hearings.
And you weren't going to be able to help going into this.
It was about 2.5 hours, I think. It's on YouTube. And I watched at least an hour of it, maybe a little more. I'm trying to find my screen to share.
Yeah.
Let me I got so many screens open, it's unbelievable. Let me try this one. I think this is it. Okay. So it's NBC or ABC, NBC News. Here are 5 of the most memorable moments from the Congress UFO hearing. And let's skip down here. Government is absolutely in possession of UAPs. David Grush, a former U.S. intelligence official, told the panel that he is absolutely certain that the federal government is in possession of UFOs, citing interviews that he said he conducted with 40 witnesses over a 4-year period. I just want to hit a couple of the highlights. Boy, if you want to see some interesting stuff, pull that up on YouTube and skip through about the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes and wait till these people start testifying. These are all high-ranking government officials who say things like non-human biologics were found at a crash site. So Grush, the same guy, who underscored that he has not personally spotted a UAP or UFO, told the panel that he knows of multiple colleagues who were injured by UAPs. He also said that in an interview that individuals who have recovered from non-human biologics, I said that wrong. He also said he has interviewed individuals who have recovered, in quotes, non-human biologics from crashed UAPs. He said he prefers the term non-human rather than alien or extraterrestrial. Let's see. Ryan Graves and I think there's Ryan Fravor in here as well. They talk a lot about people being threatened and kind of dodged the question about, have you known of anyone to be murdered as a result of a government cover-up? And he could not.
That.
In a lot of places, he says he just can't legally talk about that.
Yeah. He actually said he would talk off the record about some of these things too, that he couldn't actually speak plainly in front of an audience like that. So
yeah,
it was very interesting watching these guys. That's for sure. I was looking forward. You watched an hour of it. I just watched some highlights. I found it to be very interesting. And I mean, here's the deal, is something's going on, but what the heck is it?
That's it. That's the question.
It's the question was asked very plainly. You just went over it. So, okay, you have these crashed UAPs, which is what they call UFOs now. Do you have any aliens? And he said that they found biologics, and then she said, okay, biologics, but were they from aliens? Because that could be human. And he says, they're.
He said non-human.
He
says he doesn't like
that's right. He said non-human biologics, and I thought it was a really weird way of saying it.
I think it's so he doesn't go straight into sounding like
probably
so-called conspiracy theorist.
But maybe. Yeah. I'll tell you what, that guy that was talking, that particular guy, rubbed me the wrong way, and maybe it's just his personality, but he was very he was very boisterous in his speaking and how he spoke. And I have to tell you, after being a carny for several years, something wasn't right about that. I don't know what it was, but my meter was going off, and I'm like, what is here's one of the things that bothered me is the secrecy. And I understand, but this is just the part that bothers me, is that they talked about funding these things and where the money was coming from, and he actually was saying, the money is actually is supposed to be here, but we have ways of.
Pentagon has not been able to prove their balance sheet in many years.
Exactly.
Billions of dollars.
So this is the thing. There's something happening in the Pentagon, because the spokesperson for the Pentagon was interviewed right after these, and they asked him point blank about what these guys said, and he was like, I can't confirm either way.
You think these objects are man-made?
I don't know. I have no
I don't know
idea.
either.
But
But
here's
they're
what
out there, that's for sure.
here's what I believe, Barry. I believe that the possibilities are limitless on this, and it feels, and I know they're covering something up, right?
Yeah.
We can
Oh,
see
for
that.
sure.
What
Yeah.
are they covering up? And the more these guys talk, the more you can see there's been this very huge effort by our own government to hide things from us for many, many years.
Yeah.
And that's the part that bugs the crap out of me. It's
Well,
just like
in so
these
many
guys have been
regards.
so dishonest. And did you see there was another guy out there that had like this statement that the so-called extraterrestrials had sent to us? I don't know if you saw this or
I don't
not.
know what you're talking about.
Well, and I didn't even know who it was, but it was in Congress, and he was saying that this is what they said, and it was like, what, that sounds crazy. I'll get it to you, but it was basically saying a message from these
If I
whatever.
recall, I remember something about maybe that there's a lot of speculation. It's like, why did we only start seeing these in like the mid 1940s? It's like, well, you mean when we did our first nuclear test? That's exactly when we started seeing them.
Well,
And and if I recall, I could be wrong here, but I thought maybe to what you said, I think one of these guys said that they had heard that there was contact with the aliens. They talked
telepathically
and relayed about the concern of our nuclear.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about. That your leaders have lied to you, and we've met with your leaders, and they're deceiving you, and we're very concerned about the nuclear proliferation and like global warming. And it was like, oh, that sounded like it was written by Klaus Schwab to me.
Oh God, that guy. Oh, there's something else that I want to talk about. Let's finish this up, but I want to talk about. I watched that movie last night.
Oh, you did? The Great Awakening.
Say again, Big Awakening.
The Great Awakening.
Great Awakening. It was so good. I just want to say about this to wind it up, that if this stuff is man-made. Now, first of all, if you watch the congressional hearings, what you will find is that these three guys have everything to lose and nothing to gain by coming forward. Like, they literally put their careers and lives at stake, not to mention them, but their family.
Right.
So there's that.
And they've been threatened.
Oh, and certainly they have been. And so if we're to believe that this is a cover-up of our own technology, this is just me talking. I didn't hear this anywhere else, but I'm just thinking it through. Well, then, and I want to back it up too with the proliferation of sightings by commercial airline pilots, by everybody in the military, and not everybody, but all these people that are doing all of this work. And so listen to it for yourself. But my point is that if this is man-made, if this is our stuff, or if it were China's or whoever's, if it's human-made, then you're going to have to then grapple with the fact that these people are also doing interplanetary travel, because that's the extent of the technology here. They go zoom in seconds up into outer space. So if it's man-made, we're already in Star Trek times.
Well, and I've thought about this quite a bit, and you take a look at some of these non-government organizations that have trillions of dollars, and the fact that some of these companies, you take a look at BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard in between.
Good segue.
So here's what we heard is BlackRock is handling $11 trillion in assets. State Street has got 8 trillion, and Vanguard's got 8 trillion, and Vanguard's got 4. So you've got over $20 trillion there. That's more than the GDP of the United States.
Yeah.
And if you take all of the money every company and every person in the United States makes this year, it'll be less than those 3 companies put together that they're managing. So these people have a tremendous amount of power that they could virtually build out these kinds of things and try to scare the world with it. And why would they do that? Well, here's something that I've thought about, is that if you take a look at the power structure of the elite, it's built on things like fossil fuel. And of course, they're moving that over to this green energy thing. And but if that somehow were to become disrupted with another type of energy source that did not output any kind of heat or produce any kind of carbon and was virtually free, it would destroy the power hold that these elites have over the entire world. And so they can't let this out. And they can't. Remember, Tesla had a free energy, free electricity that he'd be able to provide for the entire world, and suddenly some stuff happened and he died. So I'm just saying that there I don't know what's going on, but there certainly is reason to have these very powerful elites play something off on us to keep us in fear and also distracted from other things that they're doing. I'll just say this one thing. I found it very odd that when the China balloon came over the United States, that they didn't shoot it down. But then two others came over a week after that they didn't say were China balloons, but they were UFOs or UAPs that they shot down. And I thought it was interesting how they made that switch. Seemed like a distraction to me.
For sure. That was all kinds of baloney.
So that's what I'm trying to say is there's definitely motivation by these people that could use this against us. Then when I listened to that and I started hearing all the secrecy, it made that red flag go up, which is like there's some BS happening here. It totally feels like.
So I want to plug this show that you forwarded, you messaged to me, and it's actually a YouTube video, which you could watch for free. I personally watched it on my phone, and there were a ton of ads. So I just
bummer,
but I just fast forward. I mean, you could click skip ads.
Yeah.
And it was, like I said, on my phone. So I was able to do that, but it was so good. The production value of it, so good. This documentarian guy, what's his name? He's so good.
I've forgotten his name. He was really good, and there's something about his physical presence. It's his eyes, actually, the way that
he's got piercing eyes.
Oh my gosh, he's really something.
He's got a heck of a presence. So
he
again,
really does.
It's called The Great Awakening. It is a documentary. God, I wish I could find his name. It says in its subhead, a documentary experience about the state and fate of America. And I'll say this though, Merle. Like, thank God it actually had a fairly hopeful ending.
That's what I love the most about it, is that the ending of it was extremely hopeful. And one of the things that I got out of it was this, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, is that sometimes in order for something really good to happen, something really bad has to happen.
It has to. And we get soft.
This guy, G. Edward, gosh, I can't remember his last name. He was throughout the whole documentary. He was giving us a warning of what could happen in the future back in the 60s. And he was a young man back then. And now today, everything that he has said has come true. And we're looking at it right in plain living
And that's
color.
a brilliant guy, too. Like, so really they interview him now and he's like 80 or something.
Right.
And sharp as a tack. Sharp as a tack.
And this great awakening is this person, the documentarian, this person's experience as one of the Bernie bros of actually waking up to the fact that what we're looking at here is a movement of communism, from socialism to communism. And it's been buried into our politics to the point where we can't even see it. And then one day, boom, he has this awakening. Wait a second, what am I looking at right here?
Right.
And he describes this whole thing in such a great, simplistic detail that anybody can understand. I highly recommend everybody take a look at this, because he makes such good points, but the hopefulness about our future is really the best part about it. And I see that what's happened over the last several years is that people have woken up to the fact that, hey, there is a coordinated effort to keep us fooled about certain things, especially as it pertains to our liberties and our freedoms, because there's a force out there that wants to take that away and use it for their own profit.
Okay, this is the guy. Mickey Willis is his name. Mikki Willis. What a good looking guy. Look at that. Look at that guy.
Yeah, he is.
And
Absolutely.
but boy,
He could play like a good Jesus or something in a movie
yeah,
with those eyes.
he's really a brilliant guy, and he seems like he found his calling with this particular documentary. And so I started thinking about it because you brought up
BlackRock.
Klaus Schwab.
Klaus Schwab. Yep.
I gotta get a picture of this guy up there. He's a weirdo, and he's also a lifelong communist. That he and some other billionaires formed the World Economic Forum. This is not a government entity, and the power that they wield is just out of this world. And
Absolutely.
you know, there's things like BlackRock and Vanguard and those things that we've talked about. Why on earth can we not seize them under the monopoly law and break them up? We need to do this.
We can do that, and that's exactly what they've done. Is they've formed a monopoly. And Barry, you sent me a Crystal and Sagar episode that talked about this week that I thought was fantastic.
Yes.
But what he's talking about in very simplistic terms is you've got a store that's competing against another store across the street, supermarkets. Okay. You go to the supermarket every day, you're seeing how inflation is hitting you. Somebody needs to somehow drop these prices. Well, typically in our capitalist society, what would happen is these stores are competing against each other. So the one store is like, wait a second, if we lower our price, then more people will come and buy from us and won't buy from them. And that's the way everything has worked for some time here in America until the last, well, let's say 15 years, when we've got entities like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard out there that have actually purchased all of these companies. And when I say purchased, it's very interesting what they've done. They've purchased the majority of the stock of these companies so that they have control of these companies. So now the two supermarkets that are across the street from each other, they look like they're competing against each other, but they're owned by the same entity,
Correct.
BlackRock.
So they control the prices.
BlackRock isn't going to want to give up price margins just because the one guy can go across the street. No. When you go across the street, you're going to BlackRock too. And guess what? The prices aren't going to go down. They're going to keep going up and up and up because under a monopoly, there's no incentive to reduce prices. And as we take a look at the inflation, the way that it is today, there is absolutely no incentive to take that down. And you have a great picture of Klaus Schwab up there. I love this
superhero. What Dr. Evil.
All of these megalomaniacs come up with some kind of priestly outfit that they wear. You know, you look at Dr. Evil, Dr. No from the movies, but then you look at the guy from North Korea and you look at Mao Zedong and you look at, they all have like a smock on. You know what I mean? Like some kind of priestly smock that they wear.
Correct.
And they want $1 billion. They're so evil that way. But this guy, Klaus Schwab, in the World Economic Forum, the fact is that State Street, BlackRock, and Vanguard, these guys that are in the World Economic Forum are multi-billionaires. Some of them are trillionaires, and they are the ones that control those entities. That's where they're hiding their money.
Correct.
They're
How do you like
the ones.
this photo?
So this guy. Boy, when you take a look at Trudeau, this guy is the ultimate picture of a despot.
Yes.
He is a tyrannical leader.
Yes,
and he's cloaking everything he says in democracy terms, which is anything but democracy. And by the way, our founding fathers hated democracy. This is not what they never wanted a democracy. If you read the Federalist Papers, you'll see that the thing they were concerned about was the tyranny of the majority. And you hear these people, we've got to do this to save, we've got to have these emergency powers to save democracy. And this is all a bunch of BS. It's not democracy.
Right.
And it's not the republic, which is what America is. We live under a republic, not a democracy. Thank God. But these people are just out to deceive
briefly
us.
The difference is that we elect representatives. That's
correct.
Because if we didn't, then Rhode Island isn't going to to get any say whatsoever. Basically, we would be owned and operated by New York and California.
And so here's what's really interesting. Going back to the Great Awakening, Barry, I found this to be something extremely interesting because we're so used to the political spectrum, right? We've got on the one side, in the middle, you've got the centrists. On the one side, you've got the reactionaries. On the other side, you've got the communists. And we've always been looking at, well, where's this guy, left of center? Is he right of center? In this documentary, they had a different scale. On the one side was individual, on the other side was collectivism. Mm-hmm. Okay, now that's really the scale that we should be looking at.
Yes.
Because when you take a look at a republic, it's closer to this side of the scale. It's about the individual and individual rights, and the individual is protected against the majority. But under collectivism, it's all about the majority. It's all about the collective, and you as an individual do not matter. And we've seen what countries look like that are on, these are all the isms over here, the fascism, the communism, the socialism, the globalism. That's all of this. This is all collectivism over here. And we've seen it happen. My one example is when in the World War II with even the Nazis fighting the Russians, the communists. At the end of the battle, the Nazis would go out and they'd clean up their dead bodies. The communists would just leave them out there because the individual didn't matter, and that's it. They were just meat for the machine. And this is not what we want. This is where our liberties all get taken from us. To sacrifice for the greater good is not what America was built on.
Right. And I just want to make one point that I think is very confusing to most of us. And the companies like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, what they are doing when they are pushing this ESG agenda onto the companies that they own, that's social and governance, environmental, social governance. So it's the woke agenda. And so they make people like Bud Light go out there and sabotage themselves. And so why are they doing that? And I'm going to need a little help with a clear explanation of this, Merle, but they're so rich that they don't care about that individual company's profitability right there. What they're trying to do is incite violence and upheaval into vulnerable communities, and then plummet the property value so that they can come in and buy it up, which are doing at record rates, which is why we don't have affordable housing anymore.
That's exactly right. What they're after is a one world government. This is what's going on right now. And really, America's in the way of that. Even our founding principles are in the way of that, where we have liberties. Amongst those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when you take a look at those three things, the pursuit of happiness is all wrapped up in the ability for us to own property. And when you own property, you take care of the property. And when you own property here in this land, you're vested in the land, you're vested in the politics, you're vested in, let's make sure everything goes right here. When you don't own anything, you don't care about what's going on, and you're very easily controlled because, hey, I could just shut off your supply, and now where else are you going to go? This is what the one world government wants. It wants you to be 100% subjugated to them. But if you have your own land and you have your own property and your own possessions, then you can't be subjugated. That's the problem. And what they have is an agenda called the 2030 agenda, which is you will own nothing and love it. And this is where this is going. So the entities like the World Economic Forum have used their tools like BlackRock during this economic crisis to go out and buy up all of the property. When I was living in California, we were trying to buy a house. And the funny thing that kept happening is as soon as a house would come on the market, it would get purchased. And not only that, we would try to put bids on these houses where we'd have to bid full price, and then somebody would come in right behind us and bid $200,000 over full price. And the only people that have the deep enough pockets to be able to do this are these hedge funds, and they've bought up whole communities now, Barry. And now they can twist those screws because they've made it so that it drove the property value up so high that the average person can't afford to buy housing anymore, and will have to move into their rented houses or their apartment buildings made for us, and we'll be dependent forever on them.
And we have to break them up. We seem to have forgotten all about the monopoly laws in this country.
My father was working for AT&T during the Ohio, during the Bell divestiture. So we were completely impacted by that in the 80s, where you have, we have these laws that are on the books, these competition laws
to prevent this from happening.
Yeah. And here, these guys, and this has happened so quickly, Barry. That's the one thing, is like BlackRock and its ability to do this has only been within the last decade. So it has not been that long. But if you start to research this, you're going to find out that almost all the companies are majority owned by BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard.
Absolutely. All right. I want to just mention, though, I said about the Great Awakening that it had a hopeful ending. And one of the things that I came away with it, a good piece of advice, was if your idea is voting for the other guy in the general election, you're too late. That you need to start a grassroots.
That was a big one.
Yeah. And take note of who you are electing at a local level and start there and make sure that they got their heads on straight.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I want to get involved at the local level. And I started to look at that here, and it was like, man, this is kind of messed up at the local level too. It's almost like I was demotivated right away, which is probably not the right attitude.
I think between Lisa and I, we need to start having more conversations about this and what we can do at this local level. Because
I think it's important.
I do too.
It's the only way we're going to make change is by getting involved, right?
Right, for sure. And again, I just want to mention, everybody, the Great Awakening, it's about an hour and a half, but it's action-packed, it's riveting, and it's free on YouTube. So please check that out. Merle, with that, do you want to wind up?
Yeah. There's a couple things I wanted to mention. Sure. One was that whole thing that happened this week with that guy that drowned at the Obama's household. Did you hear about that? That was some crazy stuff right there.
Boy, the news has been slowly leaking out on that one. Like, now he was with another woman who also worked there. Like, why was the whole story not divulged on day one? And why do the Obamas have a $12 million spread?
They had those book deals, and then they had the Netflix deal. So they had a lot of, they had a mega millions come in there. But here's the thing is this guy drowned on their property. Apparently he wasn't that far out there. And one thing
8 foot of water.
Ex-presidents' houses, even Nixon, he lived in Dana Point in California, and right on the beach, and the Secret Service would patrol the waters like a mile around in the vicinity.
Really?
So these ex-presidents, they have security like you wouldn't believe. And so the fact that this could happen and somebody could just drown that quickly, they say the guy couldn't swim, but I've seen video now from his Instagram of him swimming. He learned how to swim. He's doing the backstroke. I can't even do the backstroke. He's a swimmer. He was in 8 feet of water. Okay, so here's the other weird part: is if you couldn't swim, what would you be doing on a paddleboard to begin with? Let alone at 8 o'clock at night. What person that can't swim would feel comfortable about doing something like nobody? That's crazy. Nothing's adding up on this whole thing. And I think that this is going to turn into something, but
Oh God, I don't think so. Just it'll get swept under the rug.
probably
I
along
mean,
with
there's
everybody
definitely
else.
things not adding up. I don't know
Yeah.
what. Now, I would say, as far as a guy that can't swim out at 8 o'clock at night this time of year, that's still nice and bright out.
Yeah.
And you're on a
But can't
floating
swim.
paddleboard, but you're on a
Yeah.
floating paddleboard. So you got something like, I would
Yeah.
not think that it would be dangerous. But
Well,
like I
hold
said,
on.
it's been taking a week for the news to continue to trickle out.
It's hard to remember when I couldn't swim, but I do remember that feeling of being near the water and being afraid to fall in because I might drown. And I remember my dad never learned how to swim, and I never saw him on really any boats or anything like that. He was very like that fear of falling into the water and not knowing what to do is pretty thick. So that's what I'm saying. A paddleboard isn't a boat. You could fall off of those pretty easily. And if you don't know how to swim, what are you doing going out there at 8 o'clock at night? I mean, I agree. Okay. So East Coast, 8 o'clock at night, a little bit different than Cleveland. It gets darker a little bit earlier. This time of year, it's probably still pretty bright out there, but still, I'm just thinking, what person would do that? What person, I mean, maybe he's crazy. That could be, but
it could be. God only knows. I mean,
who knows?
I couldn't
Who
imagine
knows?
what the real story is behind there, but it just seems fishy right now.
It sure does. And
Yeah.
okay, so I also saw a picture, and this is on Twitter of Obama, and he's got a black eye, and his fingers are all messed up, and they're like, "Oh, look at why has he got a black eye, and he's got a swollen lip," and so it's like, what? Okay, so there's all kinds of fishy stuff going on, and then finally,
That sounds so fake, dude.
I know, right? But look at it yourself and make up your own mind. That's what I saw. Hey, last thing, Twitter with the X.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think two things, and I've heard a lot of people smarter than me talking about it online. On the one hand, and I'm fighting the sneeze here. I think it's a
Don't you hate that? It's a ridiculous.
I think it's a ridiculous rebrand because it had such a strong brand image as is, and X has no brand image.
Good point.
But he's been wanting to build this X company since PayPal. PayPal, which he started way back when, was supposed to morph into this an all-inclusive online, do everything. Like, remember what AOL tried to be in the beginning?
Yeah.
That's what he's trying to do with X. And so that's where it's going. But so I have a lot of doubts about my execution of this, but on the other hand, it's Elon Musk. And there's that. He seems to come out smelling like a rose all the time.
Every time. Yeah, I kind of like it. And here's why, because
I'm not
I do agree with you that it's not as creative. X, what is that? We were tweeting people. Now we're going to X people. That's kind of a weird thing. But here's what I like about X. It's kind of like rebellion. And because like, remember Malcolm X, it's like there's something cool about X. And also, just when you think about the Twitter files, and now you put a big X over that, there's something cool about that as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, I go on Twitter all the time and check out the articles. Nothing's really changed. You still have, you have good stuff and you got bad stuff on there. But I just kind of like the fact that he took control of that company and then exposed all those things.
I like all that
behind the scenes. And now you put a big X on it. He put his X on it.
Yeah, but it's a bad X.
It's a bad X.
I'm a brand designer. Even you.
It's a really weird X, but it's still an X. And also, they took down his sign in San Francisco.
I saw that.
It was bugging everybody.
But I still hate Twitter.
People were getting triggered.
Whether it's X or whatever, it's a vile place. I scroll through it and it's just inflammatory political BS, or at least that's what my feed is filled with, and I can't stand it.
It makes
me feel bad.
I understand what you're saying. And you're like, if you screw up your algorithm on one of these social media things, and
Yeah.
then suddenly you're getting all this crap,
I know,
that's another thing.
I don't
Then
know how
how
I'm
do you get rid of it?
connected to all these people.
I know.
I never reached out to any of them.
Same here. Like Twitter's a mystery to me. Like, what? Who are these? Why are you following me? Well, I haven't even posted anything. Why are you following me?
Right.
It's the same thing with Pinterest too. Like, who are those people that are following me? I don't know.
I forgot all about Pinterest.
There.
Yeah,
and that's a weird one too. Like you look at a picture and now, oh, that's what he likes, and then you get like a billion of these things.
Right. Have you, probably not, but have you checked out Threads? Twitter's competitor.
No, I never even heard of it. Threads.
Really?
Yeah.
Facebook came out with that about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And the word is, Crystal and Sagar talked a lot about it, is that they're trying to make it more of an offshoot of Instagram. And so if you think about Facebook and Twitter, a lot of parallels there, a lot of vile behavior. But then Facebook bought Instagram, and Instagram, like, I don't spend much time on there at all either, but it's a friendly it's basically a friendly app. Like, you scroll through there and see people dancing or whatever, or sending memes and jokes. Threads is supposed to be that version of Twitter, where not political. I think they probably censor politics, but it's not political or news. So what are you left with? You're kind of left with a TikTok version of Twitter,
Yeah.
So they came out gangbusters with all their millions of signups and declared immediate success, but signups aren't active users. So right now the jury is out. Are people going to actually use that program? Because it's looking doubtful, because you're not putting the inflammatory stuff on there. And unfortunately, people want the inflammatory stuff.
Yeah, and it's like human nature, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's kind of like people yelling fire all the time. You want to know where the hell the fire is at,
Yeah, and you can't help but look at the fire, or you can't help but see the horrible accident. You got to see these things.
Yeah. Hey, I've gotten over it. I just don't care about these things.
I've got let me switch gears just a little bit. Another one, RFK Jr. I've been so fascinated with this guy.
Me too, especially the conspiracy against him, calling him a conspiracy theorist.
It's so crazy. And here's something he came out with we're talking about Twitter, and I was just trying to pull it up, and it's actually kind of hard to pull his tweets up because these tweets are protected. What?
Really?
Okay.
Oh my God.
I saw one by him yesterday, and he was talking about the fact that he has not been given Secret Service protection for his campaign. It was denied to him.
Wow.
And he's talking about the fact that every president since his uncle JFK was assassinated, every president, every person that's running for president gets assigned a Secret Service detail. He has not been assigned that. It was denied him by the Biden administration.
Oh my
God. And so he's railing on this, and he's saying, look, until the people that did away with my uncle are brought to justice, as a result of them not being brought to justice, every president since my uncle was assassinated has been under the control of the military industrial complex. And they are just an agent of the military industrial complex along with Congress to sell their goods. And until that changes, the president will always be relegated to that role. And this is why they're not giving me Secret Service protection. And I think he's making a great point.
He makes a lot
what
of
he's
great
talking
points.
about, right? It's very insightful. I don't agree with everything that he's saying, but I gotta say the things that he's really harping on right now are the things that need to be said. And you can see the powers that be are very threatened by RFK Jr. and everything that he's saying. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend time eliminating his Secret Service detail and censoring him everywhere that he
For sure.
goes, and just what is it called, gaslighting him.
Yeah.
So before he even speaks, you have this opinion, oh, this guy is a crackpot.
Yeah. And, thank God that there's the demise of mainstream media. It just continues to fall into the abyss. Thank God, because they're really good at pushing out those sound bites and controlling people's opinions while they do. I've said this several times in comments online about something about RFK being a conspiracy theorist, and I'll say, give me 3 examples. Crickets. Now I could, if I thought about it, I'd come up with 1 or 2, because I've listened to probably 10 hours of him on podcasts. And there's been a couple of times where it's like, I don't know if I agree with that at all. I think you're going a little farther, but generally speaking, I think that he's exposing a lot of important stuff.
He really is. And the stuff that he's exposing is stuff that he's been studying for decades. Yeah. So he's an expert in these areas, and it's really fascinating to watch him and hear what he's saying and see the response that's happening from other Democrats that seem to think he's the devil. I think it's very telling when it comes down to what's happened with this Democrat Party. And I'm not giving the Republicans a break either, but I'm focusing on the Democrats right now. And you take a look at what's happened with the Biden administration and these things that are happening, especially with Hunter right now, and the connections that are coming out between him and his father, and the business dealings that he said that Joe Biden said he had never talked about. All that's coming out.
That'll get brushed under the rug. But the most damning thing to happen in the last couple of weeks was that judge I don't know if you want to say overturning, but both sides thought they had what do you want to say? Everything wrapped.
They had a deal. Yeah.
Yeah, with his sweetheart deal. And the judge is like, I can't just rubber stamp this. This doesn't look right at all. It's unprecedented. So where does that stand right now?
Well, now there's another court date that's going to happen on this one. So there's some gray stuff that's coming out, but he had to plead not guilty to those 2 charges, which the deal was he would plead guilty to them, and then he would get off on the gun charge, the felony. And also it appears in the deal that Hunter Biden would then have immunity for any other things.
Something like a double jeopardy.
Yeah, it was like, this guy can go ahead and commit crimes and never be charged for them.
Could you imagine giving him that kind of power?
Well, right? That's the deal that they had out there. And the funny thing was, when the prosecutor said, no, we're still going to be investigating him, and then the Hunter Biden's lawyer yells out, then no deal. And it was like, well, wait a second. What leverage did he have to be like, no deal? What is oh, come on. I think the prosecutor would say, okay, no deal, then you're going to jail, buddy. But it works a little different if you're part of the Biden family, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
But this whole thing was predicated on the fact that the judge, who was supposed to be this rubber stamp on this whole thing, the day before this was the interesting part, because James Comer, who is in charge of the Ways and Means Committee in Congress, who's investigating Hunter Biden, sent the transcripts of his hearings that he's been having in Washington to the judge to review. Felt like the judge needed to review this before she came in and gave her ruling.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Now get this. Here's what happened. Then she gets a call from somebody on a Republican from the Ways and Means Committee, who tells her that, wait a second, you can't use this. We have to strike everything from the record on this. And that was the phone call. Here's what happened. They got caller ID on the phone call and saw that call came from Hunter Biden's lawyer's office.
Right.
They called and pretended they were a Republican on the committee. She heard that. And then suddenly it was like, wait a second, I'm being led to slaughter on this, and I'm going to sign my name on this whole thing, on this unprecedented deal. No deal. And
but look at the arrogance. of
The
the part.
arrogance of
They're
a
just
party that says believe all women.
yeah,
And then you're gonna try to fool this woman because you think she's an idiot. I mean, that's pretty much
I
what
think it's
came
just that
out.
they're so used to having everything swept under the rug. The media's in the bag, all of that. And again, the saving grace that we have is the demise of mainstream media. And there's more of us gaining awareness on independent podcasts and I suppose to some extent social media.
Well, and that's going back to the Great Awakening.
Mm-hmm.
These are all of these arrogant missteps have happened, which have now caused this awakening. People are like, something about this doesn't smell right.
Right.
And now we can unleash this information, and we have been. It's available out there. You just aren't going to get it on any mainstream media.
No.
And I include Fox News on that.
Sure.
As conservative, I know that they're tainted as well, and they're trying to deceive us. You're
Who
not going
owns
to get
them?
the truth. Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News.
Who
and
really
he's
owns them?
really
Go
owned
higher.
by the cabal. BlackRock is in there.
BlackRock.
Yeah, BlackRock is in there, and this is why all these people get fired all the time, because they're the ones in control.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it's all a big racket.
Yes, it is.
That's what we're here to tell you. It's a racket. Look into it.
Need to take the monopoly idea and just plow through our government and these businesses and take control back, the individual.
It's such a good point, Barry. The monopoly thing is that these are legal monopolies, and they're bigger than any of the monopolies we've ever seen before. And not only that, they're in cahoots with our federal government. We found out from the Crystal and Sauger that there's 3 ex-BlackRock employees in the Biden administration.
Right. That's
come on.
Right.
I know. Come on, man. As Joe Biden would say.
Yeah. Come on, man. All right, bud.
All right. It's time. This was great, man. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We got real heavy on a lot of things, but there's really important things that we discussed.
I think so. It was a good one.
All right, bro. I'll talk to you soon. Hopefully I'll have this out later today. I hope.
Very good. And all right. Well,
you guys have a great week.
You too. All right.